Candace Owens sat at the view table on a Thursday morning that felt tense before the coffee even hit the mugs. She wore a fitted black blazer, her hands folded so neatly in her lap that the rings on her fingers caught the lights every time she moved. The audience clapped louder than they meant to when Whoopi said her name. That mix of curiosity and dread you hear when people know something might break wide open. Whoopi gave her a polite nod, voice calm but careful. She said, "Please welcome Candace Owens, commentator, author, and someone who never shies away from saying exactly what's on her mind." Candace smiled, but it was the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. She said, "Thank you for having me." Joy Behar didn't waste time. She leaned in first, pen tapping her card like a countdown clock. She said, "Candace, you've made a whole career out of telling people what they're doing wrong. But what are you actually doing right?" Candace didn't flinch. She said, "I'm telling people they're not victims, that they can do more than sit around blaming everyone else for their problems." The audience murmured, a low ripple of oohs that didn't land as claps. Sunny Hostin spoke next, her voice calm but sharp under the words. She said, "You know, a lot of people feel like you make excuses for things that hurt people who look like you." Candace's eyes flicked to Sunny, the smile never breaking. She said, "I don't make excuses. I break lies." Joy's laugh cracked out, too loud for the mic. She said, "So it's all lies, huh? Racism, poverty, injustice, just excuses to you." Candace's tone dropped flatter than the lights above the table. She said, "I grew up poor too. I didn't sit there waiting for someone to save me." Sarah Haynes leaned in, her voice softer. She said, "But Candace, do you ever worry that your message makes people feel alone? That it ignores real struggles?" Candace turned to Sarah, her tone softened just a notch. She said, "Telling people they're stuck forever makes them alone. I'm telling them they're not." Joy cut in, her pen tapping faster now. She said, "You're telling them what they want to hear, that they're not responsible for anything broken in this country?" Candace's mouth twitched. She said, "No, Joy, that's what you tell them. I tell them they're responsible for themselves." Whoopi's voice stayed calm, but there was steel under it now. She said, "Candace, you're smart enough to know it's not that simple." Candace didn't blink. She said, "It's not complicated either, unless you're making a living keeping people angry." The audience gasped, a quick, low ripple that didn't turn into applause. Joy leaned in, her voice sharp. She said, "You're saying I make a living keeping people angry?" Candace's tone stayed steady, each word colder than the last. She said, "I'm saying this whole table does." Joy's pen dropped to the table, her hand slamming down just loud enough to catch the hush. She said, "You come on The View and tell us we're the problem? You think we're the reason people are angry?" Candace leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes locked so tight on Joy that Whoopi didn't even try to cut in yet. She said, "I think you make a living selling outrage and calling it compassion." The audience let out a low gasp. No claps, just that sound when a line hits harder than they were ready for. Sunny's tone slipped sharp under the calm. She said, "Candace, what you're doing right now is the same thing, stoking division for attention." Candace turned to her, that too calm smile still there. She said, "No, Sunny. I'm telling people they don't need your permission to think for themselves." Sarah tried to ease the edge, voice soft but tight. She said, "But people do look up to you. Don't you feel any responsibility when your words divide people more?" Candace's jaw flexed. She said, "You can't divide what was never united. The truth is, the only unity you want is everyone agreeing with you." Joy snapped, her voice too loud for the mic. She said, "You think you're better than everyone here? You're just another grifter making money off anger." Candace leaned back, her laugh so soft it made the hush sharper. She said, "Joy, if I wanted to get rich selling victimhood, I'd be sitting in your chair." The audience gasped again, sharper this time, but nobody clapped. Whoopi's eyes narrowed, her voice cutting through like a blade. She said, "That's not fair, Candace. People here have spent years fighting for communities you say you care about." Candace's eyes didn't move. She said, "Fighting or feeding off them?" Sarah's hand went up, trying to pull it back. She said, "Okay, let's be real. Candace, what do you want people to do with what you're saying right now? Candace's tone dropped to a whisper that carried anyway. She said, stop waiting for people at this table to save you. Save yourselves. Joy's hands slammed the table again. She said, you're a fraud. You're the worst kind. The kind that uses people's pain to build your brand. Candace's chair scraped back an inch, her eyes narrowing, voice flat as stone. She said, you'd know, Joy. You've built a whole career selling pain you never felt. The hush held like a glass about to crack. Nobody clapped. Nobody moved. Whoopi's voice cut in, lower now, almost a warning. She said, Candace, you want to sit here and throw insults, or you want to have a real conversation? Candace didn't blink. She said, there's no conversation when the only truth you want is your own. Her chair pushed back further, the scrape loud enough that a woman in the front row flinched. Joy pointed her pen like she wanted to stab the air between them. She said, walking out doesn't make you right. Candace stood up, her voice calm, colder for it. She said, no, but staying here would make me a liar. Joy's pen hovered midair, but her next line died in her throat when Candace pushed her chair fully back. The scrape cut through the studio hush louder than anything anyone said next. Whoopi's voice came in, calm, but tight enough to snap. She said, so you're just gonna run, Candace? After throwing your grenades, you're gonna storm out and play the victim you claim doesn't exist? Candace turned to Whoopi. No grin, no warmth, just that flat steadiness that said she'd already decided. She said, I'm not running. I'm walking away from a table that doesn't want the truth. The audience sat frozen. No claps, no gasps now, just the kind of silence that makes people realize there's no neat spin left. Sunny leaned in, her voice cracking a little. She said, and what is the truth to you, Candace? That you're the only one who sees it. Candace's eyes didn't soften. She said, no, that the truth doesn't need your permission to exist. Joy's mouth twisted, her voice rising sharp enough to sting. She said, you're a disgrace to every woman who's fought for real progress. Candace's mouth twitched, not a smile, just that line that says the bridge is gone. She said, keep fighting your fake fights, Joy. Just don't drag the rest of us down with you. Sarah reached out like she might grab Candace's sleeve, but her hand dropped before it landed. She didn't say a word. Whoopi's arms folded, her voice cold as the studio lights. She said, don't come back here pretending you care about people if you can't even have a conversation. Candace stepped behind her chair, boots echoing louder than the band ever could. She said, I didn't come here to have a conversation. I came here to say what you want. Joy snapped, voice cracking through the hush. She said, get out, Candace. Candace didn't even look back at her. She looked straight at the audience. No wave, no grin, no apology. Just one last line that landed like a door slamming shut. She said, keep clapping for your chains. I'll keep breaking mine. She walked off. No sign lit up to clap, no cue to cut the hush. The curtain swallowed her whole, and the panel just sat there, mugs half raised, eyes locked on the empty chair she left behind. Nobody moved. Nobody cheered. They just sat in the silence she'd carved out for them, the kind that doesn't fade when the lights go down. By the next morning, the clip was everywhere. Candace destroys the view. Candace Owens storms out, headlines chewing on the hush she'd left behind. She didn't issue a statement. She didn't spin it. She didn't explain it. She didn't have to. Some rooms don't want a conversation. They want a performance. And some people know when the only honest thing left is to stand up, say nothing more, and walk straight through the noise.